The purpose of this video is to discuss a case that my co-authors Jeff Jones, James Long, and myself have written and recently published in Issues in Accounting Education that we're submitting for consideration for the George Kroll Grant Thornton Teaching Innovation Award. This short video is going to briefly introduce our case, review the case files, discuss the student perception data that we've gathered, and then finally conclude with a discussion of how the case requirements link to the AICPA's core competency framework. The case is meant to integrate course material from really principles, intermediate 1, intermediate 2, or the intermediate course sequence. But we had found over the years, having taught principles and intermediate and advanced and the research courses and even MBA courses, we found that students oftentimes struggle to integrate the material across the different financial accounting courses. And there just wasn't a lot of opportunity for students to do this. And that served as motivation. The case employs a realistic scenario in which students apply for internships with Pane in the Glass, Inc.'s financial reporting group. As part of the interview process, students are required to demonstrate their financial accounting knowledge by completing a simulated accounting and financial reporting cycle using Excel. Specifically, they analyze transactions and prepare the appropriate journal entries, book adjusting and closing journal entries, and prepare a set of financial statements. The case is intended to provide students with a comprehensive review and integration of intermediate financial accounting concepts. The modular nature of the case allows the instructor to assign any number of the case requirements depending on the desired level of involvement and the amount of time available. In addition, the instructor can easily add, remove, or modify individual transactions, maximizing flexibility and allowing the instructor to tailor the case to specific topics of interest and/or emphasis. As shown here, the case was recently published in Issues in Accounting Education. All of the case files are available in electronic form on the American Accounting Association's Issues in Accounting Education website. The case files include the actual case, it includes the teaching notes, it includes the Excel files that represent the deliverable that students complete, as well as a solution, and then finally the teaching notes discuss the recommended correct solutions for the case, as well as common pitfalls that students encounter. Shown here is the hypothetical accounting software, which is really an Excel workbook that students work through. This is the main file that the students work with in completing the case. Okay, multiple color-coded tabs, where on tab 1 you see a place for students to list their team members and such. In the past, we've oftentimes implemented the case as a team-oriented assignment. It seems to help the case run more efficiently when students are explicitly encouraged to work together on the assignment. It gives them opportunity to bounce around ideas on the best way to approach the assignment and such. But at the same time, we've also assigned this as individual standalone assignments as well, and that has its pros and cons also. Listed here is a suggested grading rubric, but that can be tweaked as the instructor sees fit. On the next tab, we see the helpful hints and a starting trial balance for Pane in the Glass. Okay, the starting trial balance is dated January 1st of 20X1, and we've got the account numbers, account titles, and the debit or credit balances provided on the general ledger. The case is easily adaptable, okay, and it's instructors wish to add to the case materials and add different accounts and different transactions, this beginning trial balance here is easily adapted. Any rows can be added, and account numbers and account titles with balances can easily be inserted into this trial balance. On the next tab is a listing of frequently asked questions that students encounter, as well as check figures to help provide students a bit of guidance along the way to help them know, are they on the right track. And then finally, the last blue tab is a listing of the chart of accounts that students are to use when accounting for or recording the various transactions, with explicit descriptions of the nature of the account, whether it's current or non-current, the account number, account title. This chart of accounts provides a control to make sure that students enter the account numbers and names into the worksheets correctly. Okay, so the accounts that the students use must tie back to this chart of accounts here. And again, if instructors wish to add to or delete any information here, that's easily achieved. Then we see the green tabs. This moves into sort of the first phase of the case, where students are asked to provide the actual journal entries for the year. The one other file that students are required to work with is a Microsoft Word document that actually lists out the accounting policies, procedures, and other relevant facts listed here in Exhibit 1 that students need to understand or need to know in order to complete the assignment. And then Exhibit 2, starting on page 2 here of the Word document, lists out the different transactions for the year. Okay, we've just found over time that it's easiest to include the accounting transaction descriptions in a Word document, but again, easily adaptable to add information, modify information and such from the instructor's perspective. Jumping back to the Excel file and looking again at the original and adjusting journal entries tab, this is where the students enter the transaction information into the system based on the information provided in the Word document that we just looked at. Again, for control purposes, students must use the accounts listed in the chart of accounts. They enter information in the blue cells to help prompt the students as to the number of accounts involved and the number of debits versus credits. Listed on the next tab is the adjusted trial balance. Importantly, this trial balance is prepared automatically based on the beginning balances shown earlier, as well as the original and adjusting journal entries on the previous green tab. Now, there is a version on the AAA's website that requires students to manually post the journal entries to the trial balances. And that's there for instructors wishing to emphasize that step in the accounting cycle. We have just found, however, that to just sort of cut down on mistakes and to focus attention on what we think is the more important areas of the case, we have decided that we have primarily implemented the case where the adjusted trial balance is prepared automatically. On the next tab, students are required to provide the closing journal entries. Just like before, for control purposes, the account numbers and account titles are standardized. And then this ties automatically into the post-closing trial balance. Okay, the post-closing trial balance is then used to prepare the financial statements. The financial statements are based on the worksheets here that are color-coded orange. We have the income statement. We also have the earnings per share calculations for the income statement explicitly recorded here on this worksheet. The balance sheet, and again, things highlighted in blue to kind of prompt students a bit regarding the amount of information provided in the different subsections. Again, if the instructor wished to remove some of this prompting to make the case a bit more difficult, that's easy to achieve. We even include a statement of cash flows. The statement of cash flows is a particularly challenging financial statement for any accounting student, and what we've typically done is provided the hints over here in column P. These hints are the line items to be used on the face of the statement of cash flows. And we found that this helps prompt the students, but nonetheless they still find this particular piece of the case especially challenging. And then finally, there's a statement of changes in equity that's required. We've currently gathered data from over 200 students that have completed the case in various courses and formats. We've implemented an abbreviated version in Intermediate 1. We've used a complete version in Intermediate 2 in Advanced Accounting, where the case was used to review prior course material. We've used this in on-campus and online courses. And also, this data is not listed in this table, but the case is implemented by a colleague at a different college. And in that setting, the school actually has a 3-course intermediate sequence, and it was the complete case was used in the second course, which it required students to actually research how to account for various things that they had not encountered before and they would not encounter until they reached their Intermediate 3 class. And this was done on purpose in an attempt to provide students, more of an opportunity to dig in and tackle problems that they had not explicitly discussed in class before. This seemed to be a skill set that their advisory council was really encouraging them to provide their students more of an opportunity to grasp and to work with. So it's our understanding just the informal feedback of the case that had been used in that setting was very positive as well. But back to the Table 3 results here. These are the results that are in the published version of the paper. The case efficacy involving, 224 students overall. As we can see listed here, overall, our interpretation of the results was very positive. The students appeared to appreciate the case. They found it challenging but enjoyable. Do you prefer to work on the case individually or in a group setting? This is where we observed quite a bit of variability. Some students naturally appreciated the opportunity to work as part of a group. Other students really preferred to work more on the assignment as an individual case assignment. This was especially true for some of the online students that found it a bit more difficult to collaborate with their colleagues. And finally, I want to spend just a couple of minutes discussing our case within the context of the AICPA's core competency framework. So provided here is a reference guide discussing the AICPA's pre-certification core competency framework, and it explains that the framework was developed by educators and accounting professionals to define a set of skills-based competencies students entering the accounting profession need, regardless of their chosen career path. And the competencies are listed out and categorized as accounting competencies, business competencies, and professional competencies. Now, naturally, this case, being heavily focused on fundamental financial accounting concepts and topics, the case ties very directly to the accounting competencies category listed here on the far left. The measurement analysis and interpretation competency, where students need to identify and apply appropriate, reliable, and verifiable measurements to analyze data for a given purpose and intended use. That ties very directly to pane in the glass. The reporting competency, again, ties directly to what we're trying to achieve here. Research on some level. Students had to research how to account for these various items. For many of the students, it had been some time since they had covered some of these topics, and that was part of the objective here, forcing them to look back and to research prior course material to integrate it into this project. Technology and tools, using Excel, is something that's critically important for today's students. And then also, a few of the items listed here in the professional competencies relate nicely to the pane in the glass case. So, for example, communication, collaboration, and decision-making competencies were required in order to prepare these financials based on the information provided. So, in conclusion, we've greatly enjoyed developing this case over the years. Thankfully, it seems to have received really good feedback from our students and as well as from our colleagues that have used it at other locations. And finally, we feel that the objectives of the case appear to align nicely with the objectives of the George Kroll Grant Thornton Teaching Innovation Award, and we appreciate the consideration. Thank you again.